can use the chat box, or sometimes I'll just ask you to unmute. And then when I ask you to unmute, just unmute really quickly so you can just share quickly so that many other people can share. All right?
Sister,
yes.
Can I have just the you back on the screen? I want to take one picture, okay? Just you, okay? So, all right, I'm gonna take one picture real quick. Okay, now you can go back to your screen.
Okay, here we go. Oh my God. Okay, 1 second. You're seeing my whole life. Okay. Okay, let me ignore that. Okay, so we're gonna start. And so what I want you to do is, if you don't have a piece of paper or a notebook or something, or maybe on your cell phone, then really think about it and remember what we talked about, and remember what you wrote down, okay? So I want you to think about what's preventing you from actually having peace, right? Because our whole time together for the 2 weeks was to talk about having peace inside of a storm. So, and sorry for my voice, I sound like this, but I was just at student camp doing a lot of like screaming and playing, and that's why my voice sounds like this. So what's preventing you from having peace? So you can just unmute, or you can just put in a chat. And if you unmute, just tell us maybe like for 15 seconds. But you have to share, okay? Any brave soul wants to unmute? What's preventing you from having peace?
Just not being thankful for me.
Not being what?
Thankful.
Not being thankful. Okay, someone else?
For me, it's the stress of life.
Okay. Keep going. Just keep unmuting.
The thoughts running in my head.
Okay, so there are thoughts in their head, stress of life. Go ahead.
Want to live my own life.
Feeling unaccomplished.
Follow my own decisions. Follow my thoughts.
My mindset.
Wanting to do everything.
Okay, go again.
Yes.
Wanting to do everything well.
Not being accepted.
Losing control.
Okay, not speaking positive thoughts into your life from the word of God.
Losing control.
Feeling comfortable in sadness.
But this is a very strange meeting. You know why? Nobody's telling me about a specific physical problem. Isn't that interesting? So you have the difficulties, and you have whether difficulties with your husband, or maybe you have difficulties with somebody at work, or you have very specific things that stress us out. But when I'm asking, what is preventing you from having peace? Automatically, you go to your heart. Automatically, you go to the word. Automatically, you realize, the problem is not the person and not the physical thing. The problem is my reaction and my belief about that thing. That's what everybody is saying. So having peace inside of a storm, I was just at student camp, and Mr. Ryan talked about change. And he says change, the thing about change is following. That's it. Change is just moving. So moving in the direction of the word of God. That's change. Not me trying to fix it, not me trying to fight my own battles, but moving in the direction of the word. That's it. And you could be moving and kicking and fighting while you're moving, but you're moving. But everybody talked about what is preventing them from having peace and talked about the heart and the word, right? So the two scriptures that I really want us to hold on to is Proverbs and in Genesis. And this one, like I said, is the same thing I read 2 weeks ago. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Be not wise in thy own eyes. We've known this, we memorized it, we've known it from so long from we were little. And in Genesis 39, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down hither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was prosperous, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And remember, we talked about Genesis 39 before, that this was not when Joseph became governor. This was at the beginning of all the drama. This was at the beginning, right? He's growing up. He doesn't have his mother. He has his brothers that hate him, throw him in the pit, then decided not to kill him. And now they sold him. And so he is a slave in Potiphar's house. He has a master. We're not talking about master meaning God, we're talking about Potiphar. And this is the beginning of the drama in his life. And God is saying he's prosperous. And then God is saying why he's prosperous, because the Lord is with him. So whatever difficulty we're going through in life, if God is with us, then we're supposed to have peace. We have to have peace. We have to have peace because we're not leading on our own understanding. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about one thing that interrupted my peace a few years ago. A few years ago, we had a sister in Manhattan Church. And I don't know, I've been in church for a very long time, right? Over 20 years. And I've not been to many funerals in our church, like literally. Over the pandemic is when I went to the most funerals. But before the pandemic, really didn't attend any funerals in our church. So I was like, oh my goodness, people don't pass away in our church. What is going on? And so a few years ago, we had a sister in our church that had cancer. And we didn't know she had cancer, and it seemed so sudden that she had cancer in our Manhattan church. And so she went to the hospital and she was getting treatment. And I remember FaceTiming this sister. I'm FaceTiming her and I told her, and she's very weak. She's so weak. And I'm FaceTiming her and I'm telling her, okay, go over here and show me what's in the refrigerator. But even to walk over to the refrigerator, to open the refrigerator was difficult, right? And she had all kinds of wires hooked up and she's moving slowly and she's showing me everything inside the hospital room. And we were taking all these, I was taking video and I was taking pictures and we were talking because I wanted to have pictures to show when she gets up and gives her testimony, because she's going to get up and give her testimony everywhere in the world, right? And so I wanted her to have those images. Yes, and we're going to show this one and this one. And then she's showing me the Jell-O that she's eating and the icy that she's eating, and she doesn't like this one and she likes this flavor, but she's very, very weak. And then she takes me over to the bathroom and she pulls the big IV thing and she's showing me everything. And she said, oh, I can't go any further. And so we're videotaping and taking pictures and I'm talking to her because for sure we're going to have all of these pictures. And then the other thing we're talking about is when you have cancer and then you're cancer free, in a lot of hospitals, they have the bell. Did you know that? They have the bell. And so when you have your last treatment and you're leaving and you or maybe, and you the doctor checked you out and you're cancer free, then you ring the bell and everyone on the floor hears the bell ringing. Ah, that person is cancer free. So I'm thinking, yes, and when she's going to ring the bell, I'm going to be there too. And it's going to be so great. And then after that, I get a phone call, right? Here, all the people ringing the bell, but she's supposed to ring the bell too, because we already took videos, we talk on the phone, we do all of those things. And then I get a phone call. It's so sudden. It's so sudden because she came out of the hospital. I'm like, yeah, she's out of the hospital now. And then I get a phone call. She actually went back in and then she passed away. I could not understand that, because in our church, people get healed from cancer. Like, that is something we take such pride in, so much pride, that you're healed and you give your testimony all over the world, right? We take so much pride in that. And this sister, I get a phone call that she passed away. I could not understand. It did not make any sense to me. Why? Because this sister is supposed to be ringing the bell. I don't know when she'll ring the bell, maybe 5 months, maybe 2 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years. I don't know, but she's going to ring the bell. And then I got a call. Her bed is clear. She's gone. And I could not understand. And that disturbed my peace a lot. It bothered me a lot because I could not understand, what is God doing? Right? And so I was talking to God a lot. It bothered me so much. And I'm talking and I'm talking and I'm talking. And then I start to, one brother, he called me and he asked me if I could have fellowship with his mom. And because she had lost her son, she had lost her mom, she had lost her husband. And I'm thinking, but I cannot do that. But then God spoke to my heart. I took her. I wanted to keep her. Of course I can heal her. I can heal her very easily. Of course I can have her travel the world. But I want her. And he took her. And for me, I thought, the better plan, God, is for you to keep her here and let her tell her testimony everywhere. And then a lot of people can receive salvation. Use her that way. You use so many brothers and sisters that way. Use her that way. So in my heart, that's how it's supposed to be. But God had a different plan. And God kept her. He called her to his bosom. Now, when I'm thinking about all of this, because now I'm going back and forth with God. God, I don't understand. But he gave me so much peace in my heart. You know why? He said, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And he literally comforted my heart. And that is what, when that brother asked me to call his mom and we were talking, it's so hard to go through so many deaths and so much pain. But blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. What am I going to be comforted by? Someone saying, oh, it's okay, we'll get better. No, I have to be comforted by the word. Because what can get rid of that turmoil inside of my heart? What can resolve the situation inside of my heart and give me peace when I experience something tragic? It has to be the word. No comforting words can't do that. Can't do that. No comforting word can do that, right? And so this word came to me, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. I took her and I am keeping her. And so when her family came to the funeral, they had the opportunity to hear the gospel. They all had the opportunity to hear the gospel, but he kept her. And he kept that sister's family too, right? And so why am I mourning continually? Because God took his daughter? Is she safer with him or with me? When she goes through difficulty, am I solving her difficulty? No. God is taking care of her. And so I didn't worry about that anymore. So this person here, yes, they received salvation. Yes, they're preaching the gospel. Yes, they overcame cancer. And this person, God took, and it just seemed unfair. But it's not unfair because he knows what's best. And he comforted my heart. He comforted my heart. And so inside of the storm, there is no other comfort but the word. So if we don't have peace, it's because we're trying to receive peace from somewhere else outside of the word. And remember last week we talked about, the different kinds of grace. We want grace to look a certain way. We want blessing to look a certain way. We want God to perform and respond to us in a particular way. And like Pastor Song says, that's not how God works. Sometimes your grace comes in the form of a square, and you go through a lot of things like Joseph, or it comes like Esther, or it comes like Jacob, or it comes like Rachel or David, and you can go through everyone in the Bible. But we want it to look a certain way and feel a certain way. And that's why we struggle with having peace. But if we only know one thing, like we said before, right? We don't have any other choice. Peace comes from the word of God. So if we're plugged in, whether it's a problem with the job, or problem with the husband, or problem with our health, or problem with the loss, like I just talked about, if we're plugged into the word of God, that's our peace. That is our peace. That is our peace. But if we're trying to find it any other way, we cannot have peace. We cannot have peace. So we have to be plugged in there. But Satan, he always gives us reasonable doubt. So he told me, well, if that brother can be healed from cancer, why didn't God heal this sister? She's so young. She has her whole life ahead of her. That is so unfair. And then what happens? God becomes an imposter in my heart and in my spiritual life, because God is not reacting according to how I think he's supposed to react. And then I become impatient. And then the promises of God, they start to disappear from my heart. Completely disappear. And he plants reasonable doubt. Remember we talked, he doesn't give you a whole lot of, he just plants reasonable doubt. Doubt that makes sense. But I saw Pastor pray for her. I saw her get laying on hands. This person got laying on her hands. What happened? And plants reasonable doubt. Then why? Then why? This is what Satan does in our heart. But if I plug in to the word of God, I know that she was inside the will of God. How dare me, because I want her to be around and it doesn't make sense to me. Then I do what? I start to chastise God because God isn't making sense and God is unfair. But she was inside the will of God. Her father called her home. Her father thought this is what should happen. But for me, I'm chastising God. But we are in the will of God. But how do we react? And what do we expect when we live spiritual life? We expect and want God to react based on our own standards. And that's when we don't have peace. So it's the same thing, right? With Joseph. If you look at Joseph, why is God making his life difficult? If you look at your heart right now, you have your storms, right? Why is God giving me all of these storms right now? This is some weird kind of grace and blessing. I don't want it. Why is David always on the run? But David is a man after his own heart. Why? But if I am plugged into the will of God, this is the will of God. And Pastor Younger Park said many years ago, and I can't forget it, nothing inside of Christ ends in misery. Nothing. Nothing inside of Christ ends in misery. But Satan wants to put those glasses on my face where I'm looking through a different lens, not the lens of the word of God. So she did not get to ring the bell. She didn't ring the bell like all these people. So that ended in misery. And this is how I see it. This is how I saw it. This is misery. Because she's supposed to give her testimony all around the world. I have video and I have pictures. But that was not will of God. And will of God is perfect. And will of God, he has a will for each and every one of us individually. But as we're going through it, we can't understand it. But if we connect to the word, we actually connect to the word, but this is will of God. And it cannot end in misery. So me not seeing her ring the bell, is that misery? No, that is not misery. He took his daughter, he made her live for the gospel for so many years, and he made her family hear the gospel. Where's the misery? Where's the misery? So we have to change our perspective, and we have to consider what is God's heart towards us, what is his intention, what is his expectation, what is his intention. He's not expecting us to fight the battle. God really just wants us to look towards him. Stop just look, know my heart. That's it. Why was he always in, war, frustration over the children of Israel? Because this one was smoking, or this one was fighting, or this one was, no, it wasn't any of that. It's because they always took their eyes off the true God. And that is why God was always frustrated with the children of Israel. They were always taking their eyes off him. And when you take your eyes off him, we put our expectation in other people and in ourselves. But as much expectation as we have in our husband, in our boss, in our children, as much as we expect from them, if we put that expectation on Christ, oh my goodness, we'll be so happy. We have so much peace. But I expect so much from my husband. My expectation from my husband is so much greater than my expectation for God. That's why I get so upset with him. My expectation from my children is so much greater. I expect them to behave a certain way. I expect them to act a way. I want them to know the word. I want them to be responsible. My expectation is so great. What if I took all of that expectation and put it on Christ? I expect God to work. I expect God to fight my battles. I expect to have peace in this storm. I expect my Father to do this. I expect this promise to come true. I don't know how long I'm going to wait, but he said it's going to happen. It's going to happen. What if my expectation was so great when it came to Christ? If that was the case for us, there is where our peace lies. But we have so much expectation in other things, right? And if you think really about how every battle in the Bible is won, just think about that for a second. How are all the battles in the Bible won? If you think about when Moses, they were going through the desert, right? And then they came upon the Amalekites, right? And so they wanted to go around the Amalekites. They didn't want to go through there, because they know they're going to have to fight the people. They didn't want them to come through, the children of Israel, to pass through freely. So they're thinking, should we just go around them? Because we cannot go through them because they're going to kill us. And God said, walk through. How did they win that battle? One person held Moses' hand like this on the mountain. One other person held Moses' hand like this. And when his hands were raised, the children of Israel were winning the battle. When his hands came down, they weren't winning the battle. But Moses couldn't keep up his hands because he's an old guy. So what happened? One person held his hand over here. One person held his hand over here and held it up for the whole day that the battle was being fought. All the time, all those hours, they held up Moses' hand. And that's how they won the battle. It doesn't make any sense. It's the silliest thing ever. How can you win a fight like that? And then Battle of Jericho, walk around Jericho, and then walk around Jericho 6 times, and then the walls are going to come falling down. And you're going to win the fight like that by walking around and blowing trumpet? Does that make sense? Gideon makes no sense. You have 32,000 men, and then you go fight with 300. 32,000, and God sends 300. It doesn't make any sense. But this is our God. God works in the realm of impossibility. That's where he works. When you think about the 4 lepers, does that make sense? That the feet of the 4 lepers can sound like a great army? It doesn't make sense. So if we look at everything right here on the screen, you have Moses holding up his hands, and that's how they won. You have Hannah, who's going and praying, oh my God, please, I want a baby, please, I want a baby, please. And then who does Hannah have? Samuel, such a great servant of God. Right? And then you have Rebecca and Leah. Rachel, right? And then you have Joshua and Jericho, and then you have Gideon, and then you have God saying this is the promised land, but the promised land is surrounded by enemies. But this is our spiritual life. So if God works in the realm of impossibility, that's God's MO, and you are in an impossible situation. Isn't that the time that God is going to work? Because that's his MO. From the beginning to the end, that's his MO. That's his mode of operation. This is how he works. He works in the realm of impossibility. So then how come we're stressed in the realm of impossibility? Shouldn't be like, oh my goodness, and God is going to work. You remember what happened with Gideon? Remember what happened with Joshua? Remember how 4 lepers? Remember how Hannah? Remember? Who's Joseph's mother? You remember? Who's Joseph's mother? She's not supposed to have it. She was barren. Hannah, barren, can't have any babies, but have Samuel. God works in the realm of impossibility. So I just want you to sit with that question for 1 second. If God's MO is to work in the realm of impossibility, in the time when it seems like peace is impossible, that's God's MO from beginning to the end. Why are we so stressed in the realm of impossibility? Can you answer in the chat? Can you unmute? But this is the whole Bible is like that. So at this time, why are we stressed? Why don't we have peace at these times?
The word is not strong inside of our heart.
Okay, the word is not strong in our heart. Keep going.
We lose hope.
But how can we lose hope? Because from Genesis to Revelation, God works at these times. He chose the foolish things of the world. He chose the base things of the world. Of all the sons of Jesse, he chose the little skinny one that don't know anything, David. So can we talk more about that? How come we're stressed in this realm?
In my case, because of unbelief, it's like nowadays I don't believe. I can't be. It's like the reality seems bigger than the word in my heart. So as long as I don't believe in the word, so I have worries. I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of worries. But when I believe in the word, then everything just goes away. So for me, in my case, it's not because I don't believe in God. I believe in myself. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Carrie? For me, it's like more like my belly is full of everything except the word. So there's no space for the word, because I'm too full. So that is for me.
Mhm. All right, keep going. And then what are we full of? Because the things that fill us is the thing that making us not have any peace.
Our
That's
own,
our own what?
our own heart.
Our own heart. And then what does it mean when we have our own heart?
It disconnects us from God's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of add in, so I'm agreeing with everything, and I think like the sum of it is I am so attached to being right. I'm so attached, like my identity is what I think is correct, which is AKA the thoughts that Satan gives me. And I like when it feels like it's aligned with the promise of God, there's no problem. But when the moment it doesn't feel aligned, ooh, that's when it's like, all hell breaks loose. And then there's a huge fight because I'm so attached to, I gotta see it before I believe it. And when I see it, that's when I'll believe it. And that's when God's working. And I've used that kind of thinking so often that when there's a break, it's like, God's not with me. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Keep going. Shouldn't this be the safe space?
When despair is inside of our heart and the despair is greater than the hope, then it causes a disequilibrium then. But when hope becomes greater inside of our heart, then the despair has to go.
Mm-hmm. Why does despair overtake hope? Because despair, this is all despair on the screen. It's all starting as despair. They're going to the promised land, but they have to go through the Amalekites. Hannah is in great despair. She can't have no baby. They have to go fight Jericho. How are they going to get inside Jericho? Oh my goodness. Rahab. So why does the despair overtake the hope if all of these people were in that position of despair?
We're trusting what we see with our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
The situation, we connected to the situation more of the time because that feels real for us, because we feel it, we touch it, we
Keep going. But this is despair. This is hopelessness right now. This is standing in the face of impossibility and despair. David at Ziklag.
Can I say something? In my case, despair. I'm despair when I'm focused only on the reality, what I see, what I feel, what I think. So I cannot even sleep because I always think about what I feel, what I think, my emotion, my righteousness. And suddenly everything seems impossible. So even God said that it's possible. I said, no, the situation say it's not possible. So then I'm only focused on my situation. So I have a lot of despair then.
So this is the part that's preventing us from having peace. What you're going through, what I'm going through, what we're going through is no different from what others had to go through before us. We all have to go through despair and adversity. Some of it includes loss. Some of it includes trauma, terrible trauma. Some of it includes like chronic issues that we're having inside of our marriage, all kinds of things. But we have the word of God and God is showing us, yes, you see the despair? This is when I work. But how long did it take for Hannah to have a baby? But we don't have the heart actually to wait upon the Lord. But you can only wait upon the Lord when you know for certain, my God is going to work. So that promise is what has to hold my heart. That expectation, it's an expectation that we have to have that God is going to work. An expectation that we are inside the will of God. But we often live our spiritual lives like picture A. So yes, we receive salvation, right? And we're under the blood. But now spiritual life is a whole different story. But if we think about spiritual life like we think about salvation, we are covered by the blood, and so are all our difficulties. And God will never leave you stranded. So if we have expectation inside of Christ, then we're living really like picture B. That's how we're living. It's an expectation because I'm inside the will of God, so he has to work. The promise must happen. I don't know when, but it must happen because I'm inside the will of God. I showed this video many times, so some of you might see it already. This is a bamboo plant growing. So what I'm going to tell you really quickly is that the bamboo plant, it takes 5 years before it starts to show, before it shoots. So you plant the seed or you plant a piece of you plant the root, it takes 5 years. 5 years. The 5th year is when it starts to grow. So the first year you plant it, nothing. Second year, nothing. Third year, nothing. Fourth year, nothing. Fifth year, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So what are you going to think by the 3rd year? Something is wrong with the soil. Something is wrong with the seed. Something is wrong with the environment. Something is wrong with the weather. Something is, or maybe somebody go and dig it up. The 4th year, oh, that dry up and dead a long time. That's gone. But this is what happens in the 5th year. This is after 5 years being under the ground. It starts to grow. And it grows over 90 feet in 5 weeks. So you can actually watch the bamboo plant grow. You actually can see it growing. Shoots up to 90 feet or more in just 5 weeks. But for 5 years, it's under the ground. Now, my question to you, is it growing? When it's like this, is it growing? Is something happening? Is it dead? But you just can't see it. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it. None of your 5 senses, none of our 5 senses that we rely on so heavily can actually see what's going on. You can't see it. So is something happening? Of course, you just cannot see it or sense it. Because if you stop in the 3rd year, then nothing's going to happen. If you stop in the 4th year and the 4.5 years, nothing's going to happen. The 5th year, then this happened. So nothing was happening before. You just cannot sense it. And how does it grow so fast after I can't see anything happening for 5 years? And then it shoots up to 90 feet. That is a bamboo. So what does this have to do with our spiritual life? Sometimes we're in the 1st year, the 2nd year, but we cannot wait on God to resolve this difficulty. This is causing me too much stress, God. What are you doing? Where is the promise of God? Why is it not being fulfilled? What happened in God? You don't know that I'm born again? You don't know that I'm saved? What's going on? Why did you take her? She's supposed to give her testimony. How are you so unfair? But what happened? He's always working. In the midst of your storm, he's always working. God's eyes are never not on you. His hands are never not raised for us. His heart is never not with us. He is always there. And he's saying, Carrie, look at me. Will I ever leave you? Will I ever forsake you? Yes, you're going through the storm. And he said, but Carrie, you're going through the storm. But didn't Hannah go to a storm? And what did I do for her? Didn't David go through a storm? And what did I do for him? Didn't Abraham go through a storm? What did I do? Didn't Moses go through a storm? What did I, when Moses was in in front of the Red Sea, should he have turned back, Carrie? Didn't you see what I did for him? What is your Red Sea, Carrie? What is your Red Sea? What are you standing in front of? Are you going to turn back and go to Egypt, Carrie? Or are you going to understand one thing? My God will never forsake me in front of a Red Sea. He will never do that. But I have so much reasonable doubt. But it's a sea and it's big. How are we going to go? We can't go around it. The Egyptians are behind me. The problem is behind me. It's stressing me out. It's making my skin itch. I don't even want to eat. Sometimes I get. And he's saying, but Carrie, look from Genesis to Revelation. When do I work? Always in the midst of impossibility. And Carrie, who have I ever chosen and left behind? So then I have to stop and I have to start thinking. So you are so right. When I asked, what is preventing you from having peace? And you all were answering, it's not the actual situation that's preventing you from having peace. It's really the position of our hearts. It's really that we're not thinking about the word. As Minister Ryan said yesterday, he said, change is just move according to the word. Even if you're moving and you're kicking and screaming and, oh my goodness, what is going on? But you move according to the word because there is no other choice. But we have so many other choices, and that's the problem, right? So we have to remember that. So what is preventing us from having peace? What is preventing us from having peace? We have expectation in everything else other than the word. Expect God to work like how you expect your family to be, how you expect your husband to be, how you expect, sometimes we expect Pastor to be like this, and we expect someone to be like this, and we expect our kids to put all that expectation inside of Christ. And then a whole lot of peace will come. Expect God to do it for you, right? Another verse, the last verse I wanted to leave, actually one of two, is, let me take this off, is this one here. I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. So I don't know what your storm is, but he says, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. But he said, I'll make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Pastor Song always says, you can cuss and fight and complain, but always say, but. Sounds weird, right? I'm going to put it on the screen. I don't know if you remember, I told you that before. He says, always say, but. So, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. And he said, then always say, but the word says, but God did it for Joshua, but God did it for David, but God did. He said, always say the word, but. And then put the word of God. But this situation looks like it won't change, and my husband won't change, and can't deal with this stress and but he will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. But he said, have I not commanded thee? Be strong and be of good courage. Be not afraid, neither thou be dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee wheresoever you go. But I will make rivers in the desert. But the Lord was with Joseph, and he was prosperous. But be not anxious for anything, but with prayer and supplication and with a thankful heart, come out to God. So Pastor Song said that word but is really important. So share your heart and share your frustration, but you have to end with but. But if we share our heart and share our frustration and stay with the frustration, then we're going to be miserable and there is no peace to be had. So we have to say but. And when we say but, we have to remember, in the storm, Maybe it's even an earthquake kind of problem. What is actually preventing you from having peace? Your expectation is in people and situation and yourself and not in the word. But from the beginning of time, God don't make any sense. He works when? He works in the realm of impossibility. So I want you to kind of use that language. But what's God's MO? Oh, the whole world crashing down around me. But hold on a second. What's God's MO? This is how he do it all the time. He work in this space. So why am I stressed? So why am I stressed? And it's coming crashing down. Oh, but why am I stressed? And remember, just like I started to talk about my friend in Manhattan Church who passed away. Remember the heart and the intention of God. Remember the heart and intention of God. Remember the heart and intention of God towards you. So don't forget. So I couldn't be mad anymore with God because his heart and intention is for only good for us. Nothing inside of Christ ends in misery. Nothing. Nothing. And so that situation with that sister, this became testimony. It didn't become despair. This is not despair in my heart anymore. So I actually have like a little echo thingamajig, like a screen. I have one in my room and there's one in my bathroom that gives weather and all that. And, you know, a Siri, you know, the Alexa, and pictures run through it. And so I see her picture often, and I see pictures in the hospital, and I see it, and that doesn't bring me any despair, because that did not end in misery at all. That is a testimony, and that's why I shared that testimony with you. Okay, so I'm gonna end right here. It's exactly 10 o'clock. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Sister Kim.